Hey everybody, I want to give you all a quick overview of Section 5, the presentation of self. This is clearly going to be building directly off of the prior section, which is about socialization and identity. Who are we? How do we become who we are? How do we identify ourselves? And this is all about, the other piece of it. We think we have formulated some kind of identity. How do we present that to others? Now, some important terms we're going to hit on throughout this section. The first is impression formation. That term refers to the various ways that you try to get a quick picture of someone else's identity. Think about the things when you think about meeting somebody. Before you've begun any kind of discussion, and let's say you know nothing about them previously, you're going to use available cues to try to determine who this person is. Now, the most obvious things you're going to be able to notice are going to be the race, what you think of their gender, their height, and when they start talking, their voice, the clothes that they're wearing, the age range that you depict that they're in. You're going to take that information and make some immediate evaluations of who that person is. So what I want you all to think through that is because we all do this, we do this every day, but think through the myriad of factors that are going to be filtering how do we take somebody's race that we identify and then turn that into some kind of supposed evaluation or formation of who this person is. How do we take that person's age? Because you're going to recognize the array of cultural factors that are going to impact how you're taking in this information and evaluating it. For example, and this is where we're going to talk a lot, especially in the race section, and we talked about it some in the prior section. If you hold stereotypes about groups of people along racial lines, those stereotypes are going to immediately filter your perception of this individual that you're trying to figure out who they are and who their identity are. And the same thing, if you hold various stereotypes against people that are older or younger, and you meet somebody that's older or younger, those previously held stereotypes are going to immediately impact how you try to figure out who this person is. So think about that. We tend to, when you've always heard the term judging a book by its cover, and that's cliche, but thinking about this class, we can think if we really are judging the book by its cover or this person based on those available cues, we just need to think through what kind of various cultural and social factors are impacting how we're evaluating that information, and how do we get those perceptions in the first place. For example, if you hold stereotypes, where do the stereotypes come from? Do they come from interactions you've had? Do they come from TV shows you've watched? Do they come from influences in your social group? Like, what are the various types of factors that are filtering through and now going to immediately impact this immediate impression management process you're going through? Now, during these social interactions, we're having this essentially song and dance in terms of we're immediately trying to figure out who is this person. We're trying to form an impression of the other person, but we are also trying to dictate how they're forming an impression of us. And so think of this as the give and take. And this, impression management is impression management. So while impression formation has to do with how you're trying to figure out somebody else's identity, impression management is how you yourself are trying to impact the image that they are inferring from you. And this is where we get into Goffman's dramaturgy. And so I think this is a really fun concept to think through in this section. And when Goffman is using dramaturgical theory, what Goffman was arguing is our everyday interactions very much look like theater in terms of we are constantly trying to put on a performance and sell who we think we are. And that's what impression management is all about. Just as much as you're trying to figure out who that person is and using the cues available to you, you are also trying to dictate the way that person is evaluating yourself. And so you could do, like, the most obvious example of this is the clothes you wear. The clothing we wear is a reflection of us in various ways. One, it reflects the image we're trying to portray. It also is a reflection of our social influences and what we determine as normative clothing, it's very much a reflection of the culture in which we live in terms of what is considered normative clothing in that culture. And so this is just that is all embedded into the clothes we put on every day, and those clothes are going to send a certain signal. For example, when there's a reason that you wear professional attire to an interview. And there's also a reason why you even call certain dress professional and others not. Of course, it's all been socially constructed, the constant theme of this class. However, you are trying to sell an image of yourself when you go into an interview, and you work on it. We have, the Career Center, they're going to work with you on how do you portray yourself. And so this is where you're constantly on the front stage, where you're constantly in this theater mode, where you are putting on a play, you're putting on a performance of the image you're trying to portray, but also think about how the image you're trying to portray is also a reflection of what you've been which you've been socialized into thinking the image you should be portraying in that circumstance. And so on this front stage, when you think about it, it can sound exhausting if we're constantly trying to put on a performance. That's probably why sometimes, you enjoy, rather than on a Friday night going out and socializing, you probably enjoy sitting in your couch and watching Netflix, because you don't feel like you have to go beyond the stage. You don't feel like you have to go put on a performance for others so that they are going to keep on forming an impression of you that you define in a positive, favorable light. This is the backstage. That's where you can violate impression management performances. That's where you don't have to act and put on the play to act like the person that you want to portray. And this is really crucial, this backstage. And you have to have some kind of barrier to actually separate the front stage and the backstage. For example, if they're, in class, both you and I in a physical classroom, we're on a front stage. I am trying to maintain certain appearances to show that I'm competent, that I know this material, that I actually did my readings in graduate school and continue to do my readings on current issues and stay up to date. I'm very much on a stage trying to put on a performance to you all. You all, though, as students, are also putting on a performance. You're trying to show me that, hey, look, I did the reading. My book is highlighted. You've used that prop to show me, hey, look, I value this material and I value the readings. When you engage in discussions and respond to questions in class, very much this is part of you trying to portray to the professor, hey, look, I am not only a competent student, I'm a well-prepared student. I put in the time to get here. Now, having that barrier of we are together in the classroom, but I don't see what you're doing outside the classroom, and that is crucial. That's where you can breathe a little bit. You don't have to be reading all the time. You don't have to be highlighting all the time. You can watch Netflix. You can relax. You can turn your brain off a little bit on that backstage. You can also be honest with your friends in the backstage and say, man, Dr. Keener's lectures are boring. The information he has us read is boring. You can do that in the backstage. You can vent. You can be yourself. However, because there is a barrier between this backstage and front stage, it does not impact or take away from the image you're trying to present to me on the front stage. And we can probably think through all areas of work and our personal life where we're on a front stage and a backstage. And maybe you haven't used those terms before, but you've definitely practice it and thought through it. So think through the various ways you can use this dramaturgical lens to understand our social interactions and our presentation of self. I think it's fascinating in many ways. Okay, so I think that gives a good wrap up of impression formation, impression management, dramaturgy. But if you have any more questions, always feel free to reach out to me. And thank you for your hard work and for doing the readings and putting on a solid performance on the front stage. Thank you for constantly doing that in this class. Okay, have a great day.